gentlelady. Mr. Speaker, this motion is the next step in fast-track consideration of Asian trade agreements and perhaps other trade agreements. The fast-trackers know that the only way they can sell this agreement to the American people is to rely on stealth as much as possible, to hide the agreement as they have for as long as possible, and then even at the present time not to give full information about all aspects of this agreement, such as the alleged 18,000 tax cuts being provided to foreigners, without indicating what tax cuts are available for Americans or what the effect of these tax cuts might be. And now today, under this new, more inclusive House that we've heard so much about with the new Speaker, we are provided less than an hour's notice for the fast-trackers to strike again. In moving to go to conference on a bill to attempt to fix a defective fast-track proposal, they have done so under a procedure that cut off all debate. We were not permitted to say a word about the customs bill as a whole, and the only way that we're able to comment about what is happening here at all is thanks to the gentlewoman from New Hampshire, who has offered a non-binding motion about one of the many questionable provisions in this customs bill. And it's a very important provision concerning currency manipulation that allows some foreign trading partners to use their currencies and adjusting them to get what they cannot do through normal trade procedures, and to greatly disadvantage American manufacturers and to hurt American jobs. And I applaud the gentlewoman's consideration and offering of that amendment, even though it will not bind the conference committee. It is a way for the House to speak out about that issue. But this is not the only flaw that exists in the customs bill. Indeed, the first provision included in this customs bill as passed by the House, ironically brought up today as countries with goodwill are struggling with the issue of how we address climate change in Paris. And this bill, as passed by the House, instructs that no trade agreements can obligate the United States with respect to global warming or climate change. So the bill that is being sent to conference, as approved in the House, is designed to prevent our acting concerning climate change. The great threat, perhaps one of the major national security threats and certainly the greatest environmental threat of our time, the effect that we can see all around us when we're not surrounded by climate change deniers, of which there are many in this House who refuse to accept science and prefer mythology and ideology to science, and hence this provision in a bill in a trade negotiation that began considering ways to address climate change and now has a prohibition against doing it. A second problem. I'm all for trade. I've voted for trade or supported trade with most of the countries that are in the Trans-Pacific Partnership. One of those countries, however, believes in turning a blind eye to trade that is trade in women, trade in children, trade in indentured workers, and that country is Malaysia. Malaysia, until the last couple of months, was in a category with North Korea and a handful of other countries as the countries that were doing the least, had the worst record when it comes to human trafficking. And so the United States Senate approved a provision to address that concern with Malaysia. And when that provision was in the Ways and Means Committee and markup, I specifically asked then Chairman Ryan to ensure that we had anti-human trafficking amendment language from the Senate committee in this customs bill or in his TPP bill. May I have an additional 2 minutes?
Yes. I yield an additional 1 minute.
The gentleman is recognized for an additional 2 minutes.
He told me in the course of that hearing that he would oppose truly conforming the House bill with the Senate bill because, quote, it would make it more difficult to negotiate TPP, this Asian trade agreement. So we put the desire for trade over our principles. I think it's possible to have more trade and support a 21st century trade policy without sacrificing our values as Americans. What has happened in the meantime is a reclassification of Malaysia, all designed to get the trade there without getting Malaysia to do what it should about human trafficking, which I think is really tragic. And then there's the third issue addressed in this customs bill, and that is the question of enforcement. And of course, when it comes to protection of the environment, when it comes to standards so we're not in a race to the bottom with our American workers versus foreign workers, say in Vietnam, at 60 cents an hour, this United States Trade Representative's office has been asleep at the wheel. Now, that's the name of a great Texas swing band, but it's not a very good policy when it comes to enforcing the law. And unfortunately, these enforcement provisions, which are part of this customs bill, leave it to USTR to proceed as it has in the past. I think instead of going to conference, what we should be doing is going back to the drawing board in the committee, looking at the enforcement provisions, and asking why it is that though it has had responsibility to enforce environmental and labor guarantees, it has not brought successful actions to accomplish either. And specifically with regard to the environment, in addition to the climate change provisions, one of the most troubling developments as far as both climate and the environment is the question of logging in the Amazon region and other sensitive areas. USTR was charged with seeking audits of that logging, of seeing that we acted under agreements that were approved during the Bush administration. It has failed to do so. So for one reason after another, going to conference is a mistake. I applaud the motion. I hope it's adopted, but it's tragic we're moving in this direction.